Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. India suffers from a curious problem, and that's in fact worldwide. On one side we see the flash floods, and then we see drought. India has that issue. The most agrarian provinces like Punjab, UP, parts of UP, are suffering from receding groundwater. And this paradoxical phenomena, the flash flooding on one side, which apart from destroying the property and the lives, also takes away the fertile topsoil and then the drought. And then India is a country which is fed by Himalayan ice, turning into beautiful rivers, the whole of the Indo-Gangetic plain, the rivers of Punjab, Narmada, Krishna, Kaveri, name it. And yet we have this water shortage. Who is responsible for that? Well, would you understand that within a year of the independence, India was facing this problem? The Indus water partition had left India in possession of the Firozpur headworks, which controlled the Indus water that was going to Pakistan. The agrarian provinces of Pakistan like Lyalpur, Montgomery and others were the wheat-rich parts, and they were feeding not India but the whole world practically. But now it was being fed to a different country. So friction over Kashmir were mixed with it, and India cut off the water supply for Lahore. And 5.5% of the Pakistani farmland was deprived of the irrigation, and it happened in April 1948. So August, India became independent. Till April, they saw that their own people were suffering, so they cut off the water supply. There was a political benefit of this. They forced Pakistan on its knees, and they came for a ceasefire. And the geopolitics became a core threat to India, and especially its water tapestry, as are the philosophy, technology, and the climate. Now imagine that we are talking about the political consequences of the Kashmir issue, but nobody says and nobody talks that the water tapestry has changed because of that. It would not have been the problem if the geopolitics of the 50s had not brought America to the subcontinent. And then the dirty dicks shaped India's water policy in three ways. And again, I'm amazed that nobody talks about it. First happened, what was the step? America's Food for Peace program habituated Indian palates and purses to the cheap wheat, the Mexican wheat, the red wheat. Indian wheat was much more nutritious, but the acreage was, production per acre was low. And then the people didn't like the taste of this wheat, so government started giving it almost free under PL 480 program. They call it food per piece. So don't have a war, we'll give you food. So India got the food, and that was given at the ration shops, so people had to buy it. That changed the whole thing. Secondly, USA helped India map and tap into its groundwater. India didn't have the technology. So they said, okay, we'll tell you where the groundwater is receding, we'll tell you how to tap it, bring it, build aquifers and things like that. And thirdly, the World Bank brokered Indus Water Treaty, which allowed Pakistan to bypass the proverbial tap. So Pakistan became flush with water at the cost of India. But the question arises, why did the paragon of Indian uh, future, Nehru, Patel, why did they agree? Basically, it was the monsoon failure in 1957 that caused a balance of payment crisis. India needed World Bank assistance, but they said, okay, you will have the assistance provided you agree to the Indus Water Treaty. It was arm twisting, bullying, because Pakistan was in the pocket of USA. And then the second Indo-Pak war started shortly after the tap was bypassed. In the mid-60s, 65, India's volatile monsoon failed again. Famine loomed large, and India paid a very high price for the cheap American wheat by agreeing to US dictated policy terms. That was the worst thing the government did. Desperate to become food independent, India embarked upon its green revolution. Both the minimum support price and the Food Corporation of India were born in this drought and designed to make India farmer grow more food. And that MSPs, which started in mid-60s, is even now troubling. At that time, India not changed the policy. The farmers would not even have thought of MSP. But why encourage rice and wheat when Indians ate millets? Why was government doing it? Indians were fond of millets, jowar, bajra, ragi, and they are much more nutritious. They were uniquely suited to India's volatile rains. The whole dependence on rice and wheat was in fact a colonial heritage. The colonial heritage shaped India's grain choice. So we shifted from maize, that's corn, bajra, ragi, jowar, to wheat and rice. Rice is highly water using grain. And the other thing was that the rice and the wheat are more suited to the global trade and quick cash. The humble millets didn't get it. So technology was used, and technology was harmful. Bore wells were bringing water, groundwater, to help overcome the volatility of rain. But what was happening? It was only for the big farmers. The small farmers, the groundwater was going still low. So the groundwater allure lay in its convenience. Flip a switch, water appears, but it was invisible. You can't measure the subsurface water. You think it's endless, and it disappears. Then came 1970s. A flat tariff for borewell electricity was cheapened and then removed. That was the second stupidity. Over time, farmers made India food secure, but the price was too high. Today, in 1 year, enough groundwater flows away from the India's dry northwest to meet the drinking water needs for India's largest cities, and it has been happening for 13 years. Have they ever thought that when the groundwater runs out, what will they do? Where will be the food security? Then borewells reshape the cities too, by bringing drinking water to floodplains and the periphery. The bore waters overcame the lack of the municipal capacity and planning. Within cities to water chain. The British declared that the Baulis, that India's ancestral areas were there, they started filling them up. And they also started filling the lake because they harbored infection. So they provided empty land in the heart of city, and that was gone. Colonial trained civil servants continued in the belief. So the India's first city tanks were finished, which was a heritage of India. The giant long tank in Chennai, where the Madras Boat Club once held its water regatta, became one of the biggest commercial districts. and few missed their tanks as groundwater was still available and floods were still uncommon. But the tanker disappearance bomb had been lit and is ticking. Another ticking bomb was shifting water tapestry in deforestation. The British, who saw the Indian forestry as an unsold temple and potential agricultural land, cleared them and encouraged farmers to grow cash crops. The science shows that the forestry is intrinsic to shaping Indian rains, and the British, the colonial powers, destroyed it. And unfortunately, even after independence, the British ethos is still shaping how Indians value their forest. Over 60% of the forest area was cleared in the timber value of trees, and if water is free ethos plus a plentiful supply of groundwater retarded all water management across the country. Come 1980s, a powerful new threat, climate change, entered India's water tapestry. Oceans were becoming hotter, skies were becoming warmer, number of the monsoon days became less, storms, rainfall intensified. Without tanks to absorb the deluge, those bowlies and step wells and everything, and there were no forests to moderate the flow, floods and the landslide became more potent, more commonplace. What happened? Dry regions began running out of water. What happened to Alwar? Lush green city became a desert in 1980s. Chennai, in the summer of 2019, was a typical example of hellish warmth. So Punjab passed a law in 2009 that delayed the paddy planting, which was not required. There was no need to plant paddy in Punjab. Why? Punjab is not a rice-eating state. They love their makki ki roti, bajra, jowar. But the delay shrank the gap between paddy harvest and the wheat sowing. Now, when the wheat is to be sown, paddy is to be cut at that time, and that gap was reduced. So how to cover the gap? The farmers started burning the rice fodder, and that caused pollution. And this air pollution spiked in winters. So in 75 years, India has become wealthier. India has become food secure. But is it water secure as well? And water is as important, if not more important, than food is. Food we can grow even in the urban upward form. The new technologies are there. Water we cannot. And the future is frightening. Especially sea level rise and pollution entering the picture. But are we scared enough to see the unique nature of our water and manage it with the desperation that it needs? Are we going to get over our colonial mindset even now? Even after 75 years? Our complete water strategy in India is the same as it was in the time of Lord Curzon and Lord Wellesley. Whether it was Nehru or Indira, Narasimha Rao or Modi, none of them paid any attention or have paid to the water management. But there was one Prime Minister who did a lot, Atal Bihari Vajpayee. I had at least 6 meetings with him, and my organization, prepared 6 studies for TIFAC, Technology Information Forecasting Center of the Department of Science and Technology, and we told them about the rain harvesting. We told them about the water management, about the ground level, and then we hired a German firm to do the underground survey. And we found that in Rajasthan, we have underground 500,000 square kilometers of fresh, pure water. The only thing is to bring it up. With the latest technology we found. And then, what happened to that water? Nobody's using it. If we can tap into that water, our problem would be solved for at least 100 years. As I said, that imagination that Atal had, I wish Modi gets hold on those reports and starts his ministers, lights a candle under their seat to make them work. Otherwise, Indian water resources are not only scarce, they are desperately inadequate. And if the no action on the war footing is taken, this shall be beyond redemption. Need is today to husband water resources properly. And to husband them, you need to understand them, their availability, their use. And essentially, what has happened, but get over that colonial mindset now, today. Delays have already been there. Further delays might be extremely disastrous. Thank you.